Hi, I'm Matt here in Michigan.
And I'm Randle here in Texas. This week, Matt and I are continuing our journey through the original crew movies for Star Trek, and now we're on Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. This is the culmination of the Star Trek trilogy, which is Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, and now Voyage Home. It stars all the original crew again, plus an added Catherine Hicks as Gillian. So, Matt, what did you think having rewatched The Voyage Home?
Well, I'm gonna go into this to say, before, what having watched them before and stuff, I would say this was probably one of my least favorite of the original Star Trek films.
Oh,
Um,
shots
it,
fired.
but having watched it now, I think I appreciate it more for what it is, even though I still wouldn't put it up with the other ones that we've watched so far. It's this one I think takes a little bit more camp. I mean, let's just say, this is this the premise of this movie or whatever the plot of this movie is we're going back in time to present day, which at the time, this movie was 86, so it's the 80s. So we're going back in time to get some whales to bring back to the 23rd century so they can communicate with this probe so that the probe won't destroy all life on Earth by ionizing all the water and everything and taking out all of our all of our technology which we need to like live and stuff. There's this all big premise kind of thing. So anyways, what got me a lot of it was the camp. There's a lot of like jokes in it. And I would say, a lot of this movie, I'm shaking my head, but I give it more credit because every time I'm shaking my head, I am doing it with a smile, which means even though I'm shaking my head, I am laughing and I am enjoying myself at the same time. So I think that I didn't give this movie enough credit beforehand after watching it again and actually laughing at the jokes and stuff. I give it credit for being a different Star Trek film.
Before we get into the actual film, I think it's good to touch on some of the things, the production behind the scenes. So Leonard Nimoy, he directed Search for Spock, and that was just like holding Paramount hostage. But they let him direct, Star Trek 4 because, well, he did pretty well with that actually. It turned out okay, and they gave him more creative freedom. But you're right. This definitely has some more camp, and it's an interesting mix behind the camera. So Leonard Nimoy's directing. Him and Nicholas Myers put the story together. Nicholas Myers is the person who's responsible for Wrath of Khan for a large part, and Harve Bennett is a producer who's also part of the success of Wrath of Khan. He's coming up with some of the story beats. William Shatner is starting to have a lot more say in some of the story beats. So yeah, this film kind of harkens back. This is the most of the film that harkens back to the camp of the 1960s original series. And it is kind of interesting. I don't like it as much as I used to like it. I I really enjoyed this film because it's just a lot of fun to watch in comparison to a lot of the other Star Trek movies, while still talking about good things, while still being Star Trek. And I think a lot of it has to do with who's in charge of the story. The people who really know these characters and really enjoy telling these stories are in charge. But I have to point out, after the quote unquote debacle that was the motion picture, and how Paramount was like, all right, we're gonna switch gears, we're gonna do this completely different. This movie has the same plot. It's just no time travel in the motion picture. It's like big probe coming towards Earth, gonna destroy Earth. The only difference is, now Kirk's not going to meet the probe. They're going back in time because they're like, okay, we can fix this. We just gotta go back in time and get some humpback whales. How hard could it be?
Yeah, I would say too, like being younger, there'd be a lot of these I would kind of like different parts of it where I would get them like mixed up. And I think the three movies that I probably get mixed up, or I would get mixed up, is Star Trek: The Motion Picture, this one, The Voyage Home, and the one that we have coming up next week, because there's some elements of each of those that are similar and stuff too, like you said about that. But just to go on like what you were saying, yes, like whoever the people that made this movie, they knew the characters, and that's one of the great things is like even though it is more camp than some of the other movies, and goes back to the show, they still feel like the same characters and everything that were in those other movies. Just because the tone of the movie is might be a little bit different. It definitely fits in Star Trek, and it definitely is the third part of a trilogy. I think this takes place just like a few months after Search for Spock kind of thing. Like they've just been on Vulcan for a few months, exile or whatever, as their case is kind of being heard and stuff by the council. But yeah, yeah, the characters. I mean, that's why I said a lot of it. Like I'm shaking my head, like, oh my goodness, they went there, kind of thing. But at the same time, too, I'm laughing and I'm smiling because it does fit within the characters of what they're doing, kind of thing. And a lot of it is just kind of more. A lot of it's camp because of how awkward they are, because this is like hundreds of years later. Like they would not know how to fit in this ID.
Imagine you go back in time 200 plus years, or close to 200 years. You would not know how to fit into that society, really. Well, double dumbass on you.
Why don't you watch where you're going, you dumbass? Well, double dumbass on you.
Yep,
And,
exactly. Double dumbass on you.
And like the punk rock guy who's playing his music too loud and like, hey, could you turn that down? Just asking politely in the 23rd century is enough, and he's just like, rah, and he cranks it, and so Spock Vulcan neck pinches him, and he's like, boom, and the bus starts clapping. Everyone's super happy. Someone took action. So yeah, it's definitely it's a fun, different movie in comparison to the previous films. But like you pointed out, it definitely is the end of a trilogy. It is the culmination of the end of what starts in Wrath of Khan. And so crew they're all on Vulcan and they've all committed treason, and they're like, all right, it is time, like good dutiful Starfleet officers, it is time for us to go home and face the repercussions of our actions. That's what they're gonna do. They're gonna go home, and it just so happens, good luck basically, that a probe comes and is threatening Earth, and really, due to their distance from Earth, they're safe. They're on an old Klingon bird of prey, and that it comes in handy because they can cloak, which is nice. And they go back in time to try and find some humpback whales to satiate this probe. It wants an answer, and it wants an answer from humpback whales. I don't know why, but it does. But it's still just Star Trek. It's talking about overfishing. It's talking about whaling. It is talking about modern things, and it's just putting that twist on it of here we are in the 24th century where Spock's like it's illogical to hunt a species to extinction. It still plays on some of the true beats that you expect from a Star Trek film. It just does it in a comical way. Sending Chekhov into the Enterprise to go collect nuclear energy was the worst. The nuclear vessels, it's the worst. It's the worst person they could send, but they're not thinking about like the Cold War between the Russians and the Soviets and the United States. It's just, here's a person who the person that we have with us, who is qualified in some way to do this, basically, while we go off and do the other things that we need to do. So it's still tracking and still covering a lot of the things that you expect out of Star Trek. It just tackles it in a more funny light than what you kind of were used to at that point.
I think this is the Star Trek film I think I've seen the most on TV. And I think it is because of that tone, because it is more, campy, kind of thing. I think it's more approachable to have on like television and stuff too. And I think I was exposed to this movie quite a bit, or at least parts of this movie, and that's, I'd see like, oh, Star Trek's on. I'm like, oh, but it's this Star Trek, kind of thing. So I think that's kind of why I had those kind of like preconceptions and stuff about this movie, kind of thing. But yeah, one thing I'll go on, kind of like the end or whatever that I was kind of watching, or a kind of thing that we started off and then we went back to, is like this trial. I mentioned the council's talking about, what we should do. Kirk and the Enterprise crew had all these violations from like the last movie. They stole the Enterprise. They then destroyed the Enterprise. Kirk disobeyed direct orders and stuff. And it really is kind of one of those things that's like, well, does it, do the means justify, the outcome, does it justify the means that they take? They've saved the world, multiple times. Those actions led to them being able to save stuff. But it was kind of, to me, it was kind of, so he gets demoted, Captain Kirk does, or Admiral Kirk does, back to captain. And I don't know. It's kind of like, that's always, we've been saying that's what you're meant to be anyways. You're always meant to be, captain. You never should have been an admiral in the first place. That's what we were talking about the last two movies. I guess I just wasn't happy with the whole like celebration and everything. Kind of, I wish there would have been a little bit more serious,
a little more somber tone.
Yeah, but a little more somber tone. Then everyone's like, "Oh, you got demoted to captain. This is great. This is the best thing ever." Kind of thing. I'm like, yeah.
I mean, I can see that, but at the same time, I also see like they're mostly celebrating because of this extraordinary crew just saved Earth. You know, but yeah, like from the same perspective, they pile that in with that scene where it's more or less a court-martial, and Kirk takes full responsibility as the person in charge, the ranking officer. No one else gets charged. No one else has any, any repercussions. It's all on Kirk, and all he does is get demoted from admiral down to captain. Yeah, but it does go back to that, like you said, it goes back to the culmination of what started, and really in the motion picture. Like, he's an admiral now, and he shouldn't. And this ends up becoming a thing that later, not next week, because Star Trek V is its own special thing, but in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, this comes back. This becomes important. These things that occur. It's almost like an extension of Wrath of Khan through this. It's almost a 4-part instead of just a trilogy, a quadrilogy, like the Aliens.
I think I just would have liked the ending more if it was more. So, like, that isn't like the ending. The ending is, we get to see, the new Enterprise kind of thing, and the crews get on there, and it's kind of funny that they're joking. It's like, oh, they're gonna give us some, like
rinky-dink ship.
Ship. It was like, oh, they could give us, the new, Excelsior kind of thing, and they're kind of joking like, oh, I would be on the Excelsior, even though Scotty's like,
yeah, Scotty's like, wow, what a hunk of junk.
Can you imagine though if we went from like a somber, like, you demoted us even though we saved the world kind of thing, and you had that thing, and they have that mindset that yes, they're giving us the command of a ship, but it's going to be some rinky-dink thing, and then get that pleasant surprise that it's the new Enterprise. I just think that would have been more impactful. I mean, I guess it's a little tiny tidbit of what I would have preferred kind of thing, and I guess that kind of explains a little bit more why I didn't like the celebrate, like, oh, you got demoted, yay, let's all celebrate kind of thing. So, yeah, but yeah, overall, the movie, I enjoy it for what it is, and I think that's my overarching thing is that I definitely enjoy this movie a lot more for what it is than before.
That's fair, and to more to your criticism though, there's a fan theory, and it really is just a fan theory that comes true in Star Trek V, where they were given command of a ship that, yes, it bears the name Enterprise, 1701-A, but that it's in complete and utter shambles. So they were given command of this as a punishment. Like, yeah, you get a Constitution class ship, but they're already old, And this one in particular is in dire straits. So there is a fan theory that it's all because this is your real punishment, is you have to deal with this ship. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun, it's different, but it's still Star Trek at its heart. And I think that's what a lot of fans see in it, is that yeah, it is definitely its own thing, but we can still see where it's Star Trek.
Yup, for sure. If you haven't checked this movie out or the other Star Trek films, be sure to check it out. Stick with us next week. We got another Star Trek film coming up.
Don't sound so excited, Matt.
Well, we have another one next week, but we got 2 coming up. Yeah, let's get through this next one, and then I'll really be getting excited and stuff after that. If you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. Ring the bell to get notified about when our next videos are coming out. You can also go to our Facebook page and communicate with us there. We'll also post what video is going to be coming out the next day before we upload it. For now, I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day.
And I'm Randle here in Texas. See everyone later.
Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.